Hello, 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 hello. It's good to see you. Say hello.
Welcome to the Huskies Hockey Podcast. Weldie and Andrew talking about the victorious St. Cloud State Huskies as we live to die another day. As they win the series at home against Western Michigan in a 3-game match that was incredibly topsy-turvy. And I never felt comfortable, no matter what size leads we had, but able to persevere. And we're going to be heading down to the X, down to St. Paul. I will be there. I'm gonna go down with this NCHC tournament ship, and it's going to be a fun tournament.
Yeah, it's good to know that we get at least another week for St. Cloud State season here.
Yeah.
We didn't think that. I mean, neither of us thought that they would beat Western this weekend. Mm-hmm. So I guess we should be pleasantly surprised.
Which I am.
Yeah. Fair to say, I think he got Western's number. He beat him 5 out of 7 times this year. And Western looks like they just get the week off before the regional. There are some very remote possibilities that they're out of the tournament, but for all intents and purposes, they are in. We'll get to all that and running the playing
all
with
that
committee,
jazz
calculator that CHN puts out that we all get addicted to at this time of year. We'll get to that later, but yeah, big picture, obviously nice weekend for the Huskies. Again, the inconsistency, even just boil it down to this series. Pretty good game on Friday, terrible game on Saturday, good game on Sunday. It's hard to know which team's going to show up on any given night.
Yeah, I feel like this series was kind of like a microcosm of the season as a whole. Because, Friday comes out, and I thought overall Friday's game, probably the best game we've played in a while. I thought that we were aggressive, we were physical with them, and we were able to obviously score first with Jack Rogers had a goal, Tyson Gross, some of these depth players that are getting a little bit more comfortable. Gross continues his hot streak too this season, had just a remarkable series as a freshman. And then Mietinen gets that shorthanded goal from Peart, who I thought, I've been dragging Peart all season. I thought Peart was borderline phenomenal. He had a couple of plays where he might have coughed it up, but overall, I was so impressed with how he played. But like
his best play for a long time.
Yeah.
Which was nice to see.
Yep.
You're thinking that 3-0 lead because I'm thinking the whole time, okay, two goal lead.
Yep.
Insert Kevin Gorg sound bite. And but you get to 3, and it's like, okay, finally you get a bit of a dagger.
You get that
goal.
You get that separation goal,
yeah.
and 2 should be a separation goal, but 3, it's like even more so. It's like, all right, finally,
and a shorty to boot. So that was looking good, but then Bump scores 2 in relatively short succession. He's going to be a pain for the Huskies. He already is a pain.
He already is.
Our best bet, maybe he might play himself out of college hockey here pretty soon, the way that he's playing for them. But kind of single-handedly kept them in that game. And you're thinking, here we go again. Well, I guess this is uncharted territory. We've got plenty of experience blowing 2-goal leads. Now we can blow a 3-goal lead in the third period for our season to finally sink. But credit to the team, they were able to calm things down after the second Bump goal to the extent where Molinar gets, I think the technical term is leveled into the boards of a 5-minute major, and St. Cloud is able to salt the game away with a couple of power play goals on that ensuing 5-minute major. Molinar out for the rest of the weekend. That's obviously a downside of that, and without, none of those are empty netters either. This 5 goals on Cameron Rowe, which was a season high for him up until that point. And so good to see them. You had to sweat it out, which was uncomfortable. And but able to get the job done and put away a decent team to win that game one. And at that point, feeling fairly good.
What was
about the team at that point?
What was your thoughts on that call?
The major?
Yep.
I mean, yeah, I think that's definitely a major.
Correct. Yep.
I guess maybe the question would be whether or not that's a DQ for, was it Hillenbrand?
Yeah, it was for Hillenbrand. I was just, obviously Western Michigan fans weren't happy with the call, and arguing that Molinar turned his back and put himself in that position, which again is not in the rule book. It doesn't say unless the player turns, then he's SOL. But it was clearly that, and it was interesting because after that game, I flipped over to CC Omaha. And it was nearly the exact same play happened for Omaha when Mueller hit a Colorado College player. Probably not as bad. It didn't cause an injury. But again, it was the same call, 5-minute major and a game misconduct. So there was consistency across, and I don't know, it was clearly a checking from behind penalty.
Yeah, I guess I don't know the rule enough to know whether a guy turned into it and if that's something that you can objectively determine. That seems like it's blaming the victim a little bit. Definitely not Molinar selling that hit.
Yeah.
He looked like he was shot.
Mm-hmm.
And clearly in a daze, probably had a concussion. And the fact that he didn't play for the rest of the series, I should probably put any. I guess I didn't.
Yeah.
I should know that people on Twitter would have been angry about that. That are wearing brown and gold or whatever their god awful colors are. But I don't. For them to issue a DQ in a playoff series, I can see why they'd be hesitant to do that. Perhaps if it was a regular season game, they'd be more willing to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not surprised that they didn't issue a DQ. If we're talking about officiating, the more egregious one for me was the hand pass review, which again, just a gigantic gift for St. Cloud to get that call in their favor. They kept playing the replay on TV, which was thankfully not the hand pass in question. But that might even be worse that they had to go back 40 seconds. And I think they did play that replay. I don't understand why we're taking goals off the board like that. Again, that would have been a terrible goal to give up for St. Cloud. Just like a harmless dump in that somehow squirted through Posh, and then Bump again was able to tap it home.
I think the puck hit an errant stick that was on the ground from a minute earlier. So the puck was supposed to ring around and Posh was going to play it, but it hit a stick and went out in front. I think that's what caused that whole situation to transpire.
In terms of that's how the puck got to where Bump was able to tap it in.
Correct.
That was not the offending.
That was not the offending play. Which, like, Jim Rich was also trying to talk himself in circles about trying to explain, oh, yep, he hit it with his hand, even though he was, like... So it was clearly just a bad, time.
And I didn't go back to watch the entire sequence, but I mentioned this a couple of weeks ago with the Cornell St. Lawrence game where they took a goal off, an overtime winner for St. Lawrence, for an offsides review that they had to go back like a minute, and St. Lawrence ended up getting 5 shots on goal in that minute. Cornell touched the puck several times. This was a thing a couple years ago. I remember the North Dakota, when they're playing Penn State in that Nashville game, they had one of these offsides challenges, but they had negated it because the other team had touched the puck, which then negated any sort of possibility. If at that point, the rule was if you went in offsides, but then the puck changed possession to the other team, didn't matter if you went back to an offsides review, the call on the ice would stand because it was no longer deemed offsides. But then that following offseason, which would have been the offseason before the 22-23 season, that's when they they changed that rule. I remember we touched on it at the time, is that, so now they're getting rid of the fact that the change of possession during such a disputed play, they would not, they could still challenge the play even though it changed possession. It's just, again, the end result is it's another way for referees to take away goals, take goals off the board for, exceedingly ticky-tack reasoning. And I think, again, if there is a change of possession or if there's shots on goal in between whatever, offsides or a hand pass, I feel like it's not a good look for the sport that should probably want a little bit more offense. The fact that we're bending over backwards and making, twisting ourselves into pretzels in order to take goals off the board for arcane reasons is just not a good solution.
Yeah.
So that's, as far as officiating, that's where I am more in a huff than, than the non-DQ call.
Now, the hand pass was a hand pass. When you look at it, it definitely was. The ref waved it off, but like you said, it was 40 seconds or whatever before the play happened and the Huskies got scored on. But yeah, many times we've seen offsides get negated because of, something that happened way back when. And I have always been, a fan of if they put the rule in place where, if it doesn't create a material, like a material advantage on that play, that specific play, and, nothing came of it then that's kind of the change in the time. The Huskies shouldn't get rewarded for not being able to get control of the puck for the next 40 seconds, which is what happened. Now, if it was a hand pass that directly went to a player that went in, that's something different. If it's an offsides that, was a 2-on-1 that was offsides, went to a goal, that's different. But if it's a fraction of offsides that doesn't create a massive advantage by any means, and you called it on the ice, keep it as it is. Because, like you said, all it does is create confusion, and it creates less excitement overall. So the Huskies, again, big benefactor of that one. Maybe, you can argue it's a kind of a makeup call for the goal that wasn't counted on Cameron Rowe for the glove save that was behind the line. Who knows? So now we're even.
My solution, just get rid of all reviews. I feel like that's, no one's getting to that extreme, but I feel like the offsides reviews with guys like McDavid in the NHL speaking out against them, I feel like there is momentum towards getting rid of those. And it feels like whatever the NHL does, college will follow suit. Yeah. It might be something where they just need to get the ball rolling. And
come on, Gary.
And I would say the same thing with these offside or these hand pass reviews. Or, if you're gonna come with me on that side, the first step in that is you have to accept the fact that there's going to be bad calls made, but you weigh that with the factor that this is entertainment we're talking about. There's nothing less entertaining than a game grinding to a stop for 5 minutes while people in black and white stripes hunch over a video monitor. That's not fun for anybody. That's not the idea of entertainment. And the fact that we still, when we have that system, we still get bad calls. We're not assuring the participants either on the ice or the fans enjoying this supposed entertainment that they are actually going to get the calls right. So just cut that whole process out, accept that you're going to get some calls wrong, which they do anyway now with the current system, and just drop the puck. Let's get back to the entertainment that we're tuning in to watch. But again, this is an evergreen rant. Plug and play this from the last 2 weeks ago or whatever, last week for the Duluth, that one, another one that St. Cloud had, the Lenny Hoffman. He's just really earning his keep for doing these reviews and taking the goals off the board, which, it helps the Huskies out. If that goal goes in, who knows, that game may have developed a lot differently with Western getting an early goal rather than St. Cloud building a 3-0 lead going into the shortly into the third period. So
we still tried pretty hard to give it away.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it was Miettinen shorthanded goal, and you said Bump scored, but I mean it was what, minute and a half later. Like it was
so many of those.
We just
next shift goals. It's just they're
can't
killers.
make it easy. So, but in the end, 1-0 series lead for the good guys. 2 for 5 on the power play, with Solquist and Lutke getting goals on the major at the end. So,
by the way, Solquist with his weekend this weekend also had an assist on Sunday, up to 19 points this year.
Look at that.
We said at the beginning of the year 20 points for him. He's in MVP territory, team MVP territory, which was a little tongue in cheek, but he's basically at that level. So he's not going to talk about Connor McDavid. He's not going to be threatening for any scoring titles, but if he can pop in 20 points in a season, that added to his intangibles with faceoffs and penalty killing and all that kind of good stuff. We don't just need to overemphasize the little stuff. We can use that as a part of the holistic picture of that he is quite a valuable player on the team. So, yeah, talking about like Peard, guy that we've had some choice words for in the past with Solquist, but at this point, 20 points plus his other valuable contributions, you can't put him on the list of culprits for this season if St. Cloud is going to fall short for making the NCAA. So just again, another shout out for Solquist, and getting rewarded with some points on the board too is great to see.
We will be critical, but we will also give praise when it's earned. So
that's the motto of this show.
Yeah, exactly.
We are very even-handed. We don't go off on ranty tangents.
We stay focused, and
very much sticking to a script. We pre-write all of this before the show, so don't accuse us of not putting in the legwork.
Yep, exactly. All right.
And then Saturday happened.
Yeah. Saturday happened and everything absolutely collapsed. We get a 4-on-4. Was it 4-on-4?
Yeah, it was. Solquist.
Oh,
just
sorry.
Speak of the devil. He was in the box along with Berger.
That's right. Yeah, that's
Western.
right. There was a scoreless first period that St. Cloud hung on to, getting outshot 15-4.
Came out completely dead.
Completely
dead from the puck drop.
Yep.
They had lost a step, and I thought that was one of the worst games they'd played all year. And the fact that they had a 1-0 lead in that game more than halfway through the game was kind of a shocker. And being 1-1 going into the third period too. I mean, it's obviously 6-1 is how it ends. 5-goal third period, 1 empty netter involved in that 5-goal period for the Broncos. But a little bit deceiving. Just Western had the step on St. Cloud all night. St. Cloud just looked sluggish and unprepared. It was their worst game since 2 weeks ago against Denver. But this was those Denver games were not competitive either, but this was a different kind of it, where those games like Denver just was flying around you, skating circles around you. This one was just one where you had cement in the skates, and Western was able to do really what it pleased, and the fact that you were able to hold it tight as long as you did was a bit deceiving. And once Western was able to kind of open the floodgates after that third goal, again, I've mentioned this before, this Huskies team has I'm not going to call it a gift, a curse, if you will, for when games go south, the bottom falls out on this team. And this was one of those kinds of games that we've been seeing too frequently this season where, I mean, this is one of those rarities where it's Western scores an empty netter, but then there's another one to boot on to Posh. Sixth goal with him back in the net, just in garbage time. But that's just salt in the wound and fitting way to end a terrible period and a pretty bad game overall for St. Cloud. But yeah, I mean, you're looking after that goal from Gross with a great dish by Kupka. Feeling maybe you're gonna steal one of these
on a rush. Like something that I feel has been lacking, us converting on these opportunities. And yeah, you feel okay, like things aren't going great, but it's kind of settled in the second period. And then Coangelo ends up getting 1-1, and you're just like, ugh, we better come out all cylinders there for the third period, otherwise things aren't gonna go well. And sure enough, it went south quickly.
Yeah, those second and third goals for Western, both on the power play. Rogers had an up and down weekend because he did put in the 2 goals, but just again continuing to take too many unforced kind of dumb penalties.
Really dumb penalties. Yeah.
And that second penalty of his on Saturday led to that third goal, which was really the backbreaker with about 8 minutes to go to make it a 3-1 game from Granger. Colangelo had a hat trick in the game as well. I mean, we're talking about, this isn't necessarily a one-line team because they got bumped too. Bump's been bumped up, no pun intended, to that first line. They've kind of been shuffling them around a bit, but if you count him plus the Went, Granger, Colangelo line, that's their scoring. And this game is like a perfect example of that because you got 3 from Colangelo, 1 from Went, 2 from Went, and 1 from Granger, with Bump's 2 goals on Friday. And did he score the one on Sunday too for them?
No, Constantini did.
But, all but one of their goals, and Constantini's have a good year for him too, but all but one of their goals this weekend really by their top 4 scorers. And that's really the formula to beat this team, is if you are able to get those guys off the score sheet, which in those 5 wins for St. Cloud this year over the Broncos have been able to consistently do that. This was the opposite of that formula, letting their studs beat you. I don't know if that makes the loss any better or worse to take. More from my perspective is that St. Cloud looked, like I said, dead. And if that was going to be the second game on the weekend, I really didn't have a ton of confidence that they were going to pick it up for a third game. That almost felt like they looked like a team on the third game of a weekend instead of the second game on Saturday, with the way that there's the lack of energy and no speed, no really get up and go, no pep. So I was worried about that, not only with Western just winning and having that natural momentum after a win, but that St. Cloud looked so pathetic in that loss. I certainly didn't see them coming back on Sunday and winning 5-1, the game that you were up 3-0 basically within the blink of an eye. Not the kind of start that I was expecting, but hey, I'll take it.
Yeah. Put me on the preposterous statement tournament, whatever. But I like seeing goals scored early through the 5-hole. I just,
this was not Cameron Rowe's best night.
Yeah,
I should say.
And I think again, first off, you shuffle the lines quite a bit. Where you mostly had the Mietnans together, you switch them up. You have Gross with in the middle between VT and Kupka, and what was probably their second shift. They're able to put something together, and Gross was able to find VT and was able to just slip it 5-hole. And once that goal went in, I was like, hey, mentally you kind of get into the goaltender's head of, God, it just went right through me. Like, I'm not going to be able to save anything tonight. And sure enough, a couple of, Rogers was able to get one in, and then Barrett Hall on the heck of a wrister too. 11 minutes in, boom, boom, we're up 3-0. All right, I can settle in. I can relax. Got a 3-goal lead.
No such thing.
20 seconds later. What was it? 30 seconds later? 19 seconds later. Boom, 3-1. And it's just like, we just can't. We can't be on cruise control with this team. Just no matter what, it's always going to be something. So, boom, 3-1. All right. Second period kind of happens on the power play. VT gets his second, and I'm like, all right. I think, I started to relax a little bit. Lutke, who kind of had flashes of offense that we saw a lot more last season. This series, especially, Monday on game 1 and game 3. We're sitting there 5-1 into the third period, and you just kind of like, I am praying for the most boring period of hockey ever. And judging by that 5-on-3 that we got later in the game, it was a boring. I wasn't like angry at it, but I'm like, get a little practice in the 5-on-3. You don't get these many opportunities. You might want to work on that for next weekend and hopefully beyond that. But so I was kind of like, at least shoot, just try. Yeah.
But
and I was
content with playing keep away. So.
And also they were very intent in racking up the score last game. So, and also get Viti the hat trick. I mean, he did make a shot finally. But
he was like I think that was the only shot they got on
that was the only shot. I don't even know if it made the net. I think it
might have just been blocked.
So, but
yeah, he hadn't had according to the KVSC guys, has not had a hat trick in his career. So that would have been some motivation to at least try to get him one. But, and it's like, he had the puck a couple of times there. It's like, when does he not want to shoot on a power play?
Yeah. So he must have got specific instructions from the coach. But if that's the case, then why put him out there? I don't know. Right. But
well, I guess a win's a win. We can nitpick about a 5-1 win that maybe should have been 6-1. But
yeah, exactly.
They all count the same, and maybe they're
come on, Larson.
It looked like Western was trying to goon it up a little bit there. Little slew foot action.
Yeah,
on
that was a bad one.
Surprised they didn't upgrade that after looking at it. That'd been huge for Western, like a slew foot major, meaning Granger's out for their NCAA game. But so maybe that factored into just calling that a minor. But it got a little chippy towards the end, and to be expected. And like I said, Rowe, first 2 games this year, he gives up 5 goals. He's played every single minute for Western this year. Other than times that he's been pulled for extra attackers. No other action for goaltenders this year for Western Michigan. But St. Cloud's generally had his number, even stretching back to when he was at Wisconsin to start his career. So, this is a team that St. Cloud's been able to handle this year. It's nice to get over the hump. Winning in 2 games would have been great.
Would have been great for the pairwise.
And that win for Western, I think, really helped them too. Because if they were swept, they'd be in a much more precarious position than they are now, which is like 99% in. Again, there are scenarios where they are going to be outside looking in, but those are fairly unlikely scenarios. So basically they are going to be practicing here for a week, and we'll be heading out somewhere in the NCAAs, which should be 3 in a row for the first time in their school history. In the first 3 years of Frischweiler's tenure, their NCAA appearances in each of those 3 years. So, that's impressive, especially you turn a 6th place conference finish into an NCAA berth, a likely NCAA berth. It's not too shabby, but St. Cloud able to get the job done, move on, keep their season alive, and you get to see the Huskies in person this weekend.
I do.
At the X.
And overall, Posh, I thought he played pretty well.
I did too.
I think defense really let him down there on Saturday's game, and post-game comments too. Brett Larson was talking about that, about how we got to keep playing for him, even though it's not, because we let him out to dry. And I think, that's happened a couple times throughout the season too, which is why his save percentage looks as bad as it does. So
I mean, the Denver weekend really killed that.
Yeah.
Killed his stats. I think he was like 930 save percentage coming into that weekend, getting ganked early in Friday game and then giving up all 7 on Saturday. It's going to do a little number on your save percentage, but and the 5 goals he gave up on Saturday aren't going to look good either.
Mhm.
But it's just there was a confidence level from him. Even he's had those rough games, but it seems to not rattle him to an extent that he gives me confidence, a kind of confidence that I lack when I watch Bassey. And so I'm glad to have seen him play all 3 games this weekend. That's not easy. I mean,
Mhm.
playing 3 games in a row at the college level is a rarity. And for him to step up like the rest of the team did coming off Saturday into Sunday, putting forth a really good effort, I thought. That one goal that Western scored, like Anhorn should get the assist there for Western because he screened Posh more effectively than the Western guy that was close to the net as well. So, I mean, I don't think he really had much of a chance of seeing that one. But he played really well. Do we want to do a pod? Because I think it's a tough
week
call.
for Pau. And really, this is on me. I did not reach out to Go Huskies Woo for his Pau.
Well, we know what his Pau is going to be. It's Jack Rogers. 2 goals. So we can just plug that in there. Mr. Rogers. Mr. Rogers' neighborhood, taking a couple penalties, getting a couple of goals. That's about good. I don't know if you have, because Gross is definitely a possibility. I think he had a really good weekend, points wise, face-off wise. We're going to have our postseason 2nd annual Herbie Awards.
Mm-hmm.
And Freshman of the Year is obviously up for grabs. And I think that's going to be an interesting race because I think it's between kind of the 2 Powell candidates for me this weekend. I'm kind of between Gross and Posh. And even with the Saturday performance, I think I'm going to just slightly lean Posh just because I liked his comeback on Sunday. And coming into the playoffs, I mean, we're in the playoffs already, but again, I've got a weird kind of confidence, even though, like we've mentioned, he's put in some rough games along with the team, but I feel more confident with him in net than I do with Bassey. And there was stretches, especially early in the Friday game, where if he didn't come up huge with a couple of saves, I think the whole weekend would have played out quite differently. And Saturday too. I mean, the wheels fell off in the 3rd period, but it was a 15-4 shot advantage for Western in the 1st period. I mean, he was single-handedly keeping them in the game to the extent they actually had a lead in that game, which, looking back at a 6-1 final score, is surprising to think St. Cloud had the first goal of that game. So, I mean, he was doing his part in terms of keeping this team competitive, even in a clunker of a game for the whole team on Saturday. Again, Gross would be like my 1A. Vitti had a good weekend as well. They said on the Sunday game that he had 0 shots on Saturday, which, again, it wouldn't surprise me because they didn't have many shots total, but he's usually, leading the team in shots in every game. And for him to be so quiet on Saturday, again, I think I gave it to Vitti last weekend, so I want to spread it out a little bit. I wouldn't bark at you if you're going to give it to Miettinen this weekend either. But so I'm going to go with Posh, even though it's a close call. Who are you going with?
You make up some good points with Posh. You make some good points. You don't make them up. You literally.
I'm just blowing smoke.
Yeah, just out of thin air. I've gone back and forth. Posh is a good pick, and on Sunday's game, Mick Hatton kind of hit the nail on the head too when he was talking. When they had him as a guest for the first part of the 3rd period, and they talk about how there's not a lot of wasted movement with him, and that's something that I feel with Bassey, especially how there is a lot of wasted movement, and then obviously a lot of wasted movement fishing it back of the net. So, it's nice to have that presence back there. And again, from a freshman, I mean, I'm really excited to see where he's going to go, to someone who we thought was going to be the third string, especially at the beginning of the year, because we kind of thought James Gray was going to be the guy who's going to be, really contending with Bassey. So got maybe a little bit of Wally Pip right there. But I kind of hate to do this, and I kind of don't, but I think I'm actually going to give it back to Gross again, which I think would be my third straight week of him being POW. But him scoring points in every game this series, and not only that, but being juggling the lines around and putting him up in the top line, centering Kupka and Vidi, and being able to put points together on that with two great assists. It just kind of was like I think they've got something there, and I kind of want to see these same lines again against Denver, because we're going to need to. When Brett Larson was talking after the game about why he put these lines together, his whole thought process was, we got to shut down their top line. We got to make sure that we've got that, kind of that ability to do that. And, sure enough, I mean, there's no complaints about how he ended up playing on Friday, able to get to him quickly and get on the board. So I'm going to go with Tyson Gross as my POW. I do also want to say this is probably the best Barrett Hall has looked in a while. I thought he was a lot more noticeable. Yeah. And then Pierton Lidke, I think as well. Obviously Saturday was a dumpster fire, but I think this was the best that they've played, and at the right time. So we're obviously going to need them in a major way here, playing against Denver. But so I'm going to give it to Gross.
Like I said, that's
again
not only defensible, it might be the correct decision. Certainly not going to argue that. And talking about freshman of the year, and I think we would agree that this wasn't the vaunted freshman class that we're hoping we see next year, for instance. Like, there's no single prospect out of this freshman class that's at the hype level of Brnovik, knock on wood. Again, knocking on wood for any Leo Gruba shenanigans, Brnovik or Thorson. But so we've got Gross. We only have 3 finalists, but I think Gross, Posh, and then Werner too, who we might be forgetting a little bit about. I mean, he's a Swiss Army knife type of player, where he's contributing in a lot of different areas, and valuable in his own right. And a player that I'm really excited to see develop. He's not going to have the top end offensive talent that his brother does, but I think he might be able to contribute a more all around game, which we've really seen from the first weekend this year. And then who scored the first goal of the season for the Huskies this year? Way back in October, it was Barrett Hall. And we were thinking then he might have been the hypiest guy to come in this year as in the freshman class. And I agree. He's run hot and cold. His year has developed as a typical freshman, where he's got some spurts where he looks really promising, and then he goes 5 or 6 games without putting a point on the board. But he had a good weekend this weekend, I think, and he's been more noticeable. And so, I mean, there's 4 freshmen that, yes, these aren't on the same. They're not having freshman years the way that Macklin Celebrini's having a freshman year, or any of those BC studs. But they're still valuable players, and we're talking about these guys being the player of the weekend, and Gross having a streak now with POWs from you. And so, this
which is the most important accolade you can get, really.
That's right.
It's just POWs.
Yeah. So if this is a lesser freshman class, right, it's good news. Must be doing something right if this isn't like a prestige class, because we're getting contributions from all these guys. And this weekend it was freshmen in combination that really came to the forefront and was able to push this team past Western and into the Frozen Faceoff. So it's, from that perspective, it is nice to see all that freshman, all those freshmen chipping in, doing their part.
I don't know. I don't know. He reminds me of a certain player that we've had in the past. Werner does. I should go back to actually, saying who I'm talking about. He reminds me of a certain player who Werner right now has 22 points as a freshman, 4 goals, 18 assists. The player that he reminds me of the most, I decided to look at his freshman year to see how many points he scored. And just took a look, and he had 7 goals, 15 assists. Do you want to guess who he reminds me of?
Can you give me the year?
15-16.
That was his freshman year.
Mm-hmm.
Newell?
Correct. Yep, I think he reminds me
a
lot of Patrick Newell. And you guys all know how much I love me Patrick Newell, where he is a player that all of a sudden you look and he's got, 2 assists on the game. And I think, where you're talking about, these freshmen don't have the seasons like maybe Celebrini or anything like that. But, also Celebrini's not going to be here next year. Whereas Werner is going to be here for 3 years minimum, I would say. So I'm really excited to see how he develops, and I'm gonna maybe have my own tracker of comparison with Newell Mietten and Newell Werner, and especially if we have Werner, if he's going to be centering, maybe either Thorson or Bernovic, or if Hall continues to develop. I mean, there's a lot of upsides. So
he's played with a lot of players, like you said, with Larson. Obviously, this wasn't the first time he's shuffled lines around. It's a frequent occurrence. But So Werner's been playing with a lot of different line mates, but seems to have a good chemistry with whoever he's with. And that part I like. I did want to, we are kind of fawning over some Huskies players. I've got some room for some criticism too. It was striking me. Where's Ingram been? He's been cold lately, and not just from the score sheet. I remember, and we seem to have a periodic discussion about Ingram, about has he broken through? And remember at the end of the first half, you're like, God, he's kind of been racking up some sneaky points. I didn't realize he had that many points. Then he had that weekend against Bemidji where he sort of dominated, and we're kind of like, all right, well, maybe he's ready to just take off here. It's 11 points in the second half, which again is corresponding with the overall swoon for this team. Just 4 goals, 7 assists.
Two of his goals were in the Omaha 6-7 loss.
Yes, and I think he was player of the weekend that weekend for me, which was a bad weekend. But then, he had a 2-goal or 2-point performance in CC, but those are garbage time goals. Some of these you even kind of miss because they're not impact goals. 4 of the 7 assists are second assists, which those can be always kind of deceiving. And it's just not even the point totals. It's just his opportunities. Seemingly in the past, we'd be like, oh, I really wanted Ingram to shoot that instead of pass that. We're not even getting to a point where he's even putting himself into good scoring chances where he can either shoot or pass. And so, he's been a up and down player in the 2 years that he's been here. I think he's got so much skill and so much promise. It's just frustrating that we don't seem to have like a consistency or like a full click where he just kind of takes over games for an extended stretch for this team. I think you could say the same thing about Okabe, who's quieted down. He seemed to be picking it up sort of in the midway point, but I think this senior 5th year for him has been largely disappointing. Expecting more like a 40-point year out of him this year, and he's not going to get to 30. And so, yeah, there's still some areas of concern. And I just wanted to mention Ingram because I feel like I've just been forgetting about him the last couple of weeks because I really haven't noticed much on the ice with him. And just with his playmaking ability, he's always been an X factor type with me. And if he wants to turn it on, no better time than in the Frozen Faceoff this weekend, because we're going to need everything he can get facing this Denver Pioneer team.
Yep, exactly. So, one last thing that I kind of want to kind of touch on with the series, and then we can move on to Denver. And I don't know how much you want to talk about Denver, if we should just, but I feel like, especially on Friday's game, or the Huskies were a little bit more physical, and I like that. A little bit more purposeful with their checks, and I think that caught Western maybe a little bit off guard. And I want to see that aggression still. I feel like sometimes when we're just kind of waving at pucks and not taking the body, it is when we get into a little bit of trouble. And I'm not talking that we need to just, go out there and start headhunting and leveling guys, but just separating the player from the puck, which is the original intent of a body check. Just kind of lay a body in out there and get them off their rhythm and slow down Western, which we were able to do on Friday. I think that's going to be a key here when we start talking about Denver. Now Denver and St. Cloud get the late game. Omaha and North Dakota, they get the early game in St. Paul at the Frozen Faceoff. So it's hopefully that stomping that Denver was able to put on the Huskies is fresh in their minds, and they're going to use that as kind of feed energy to come out and take out Denver, because our tournament life is on the line. We've let too many things go south this season. You can point to many different cases throughout the year, all the blown leads, maybe some bad calls, but in the end, that we put ourselves in this position. No matter what, no matter which way you kind of look at it, and it's do or die for this squad. And if they're going to continue on with the season in the Cardinal Black, you need this game to a team that's kind of been a thorn in your side, who's able to score in bunches and had no problem against Minnesota Duluth. So, I think if we're able to be physical with a purpose and get at Davis early, I think we're going to have a good shot to win the game. I'm not predicting it at this point as much as I would love to. But it's, I expect it to be a lot more of a competitive game than it was the last time we faced Denver.
Well, I sure hope so, because the last series was a bloodbath. And not just that, it was so clear that Denver is the more talented team in this last series they played in St. Cloud. They're like outclassed. It's in a different league. I would certainly expect some tighter games here. I'm not expecting blowouts this weekend in any of the games. That's, again, not going out on too much of a limb. Playoff hockey, you can expect an intensity that's different from the regular season. If history is any indicator, it gives us any sort of hope as St. Cloud fans, Denver in the Carl era, I don't really look at the Frozen Faceoff as any sort of real prize. They are winless in 3 semifinal games in the Carl era. and that's going back to 2019. Keep in mind, no tournament in 2020, and then the 2021 tournament was all at Grand Forks, so I'm not counting those. It's just the 3 that they played at the X in those other years. Not only are they 0-3, they haven't scored a goal in any of those games. Now, I remember last year they lost to CC 1-0. That was a game where I think Corona left in the middle of the game, which was weird. They kept saying Corona wasn't injured, but clearly he was. They kind of use these games. I think either Rizzo or Mazer might have been out for that game. They seem to kind of use this weekend, at least in his tenure, as just let's get healthy before the regionals. And if we win, we win. If we lose, whatever, we get a day off rather than having to play. And they've been nursing injuries down the stretch. You mentioned just wiping the floor with St. Cloud without Rizzo and Carter King in St. Cloud. I guess I haven't checked on their injury status if they played this past weekend, but again, assume that they will play. But again, perhaps this is another one of those weekends where Denver's got their sights set on the regional, and they're about 75% chance to make it as a 1 seed, even if they lose this weekend. So, I mean, not a ton to play for in that sense. So, again, I'm not expecting them to just lay over here. But that's a factor in all these, because St. Cloud's got way more on the line here. And in certain cases like that, it gives me a little bit of hope as a St. Cloud fan, is that Larson shouldn't need to do any extra motivation. Players know exactly what the stakes are at here. They put themselves in a position where they need to win this game. And Denver is going to come into this game as sort of like, let's just stay healthy. We're not going to make too many risky plays because we don't want to risk any other injuries with some key players that have been nursing injuries of late. So if that gives you any confidence or any extra hope, I hope it does. But it's still going to be obviously a big test. But we've spoken a lot about Denver here. It's an elite offense, an elite team speed, but vulnerabilities on the back end. Very aggressive defense leads to some breakdowns defensively, which can lead to odd man opportunities coming back. And Matt Davis, don't tell the Huskies this, but I mean, not exactly the world's best goalie. He's played very well against the Huskies this year, but he's a goalie that can be scored on. You'd like to think that with I don't, can't even say that Posh is because Denver just lit him up the last time too. So it's definitely gonna be a test. But I think it's doable. I don't think we're going to get blown out of the building. And I expect St. Cloud to play a game similar to the one they played on Sunday, not the one they played on Saturday. But you gotta put every ounce of energy into this one to keep up with Denver and their speed. I'm confident that they're going to be prepared. I'm not confident that they're going to win necessarily, but I don't think that they're, a 20 to 80% chance of, I don't think that this is going to be a miracle on ice situation, where this is just going to be an unbelievable upset. They can beat this team. It's definitely doable, but it's not going to be easy. That's for sure. Maybe with that miracle on ice, maybe we can use, because remember the U.S. lost to the Soviets like 10-4, 10-2 something in Madison Square Garden like 2 weeks before the Olympics.
Mm-hmm.
If you see any of those like documentaries about it, they always bring that up. Like Soviets walked into MSG and just wiped the floor with these college kids. And so maybe you can use the mopping the floor in St. Cloud, that disaster, as sort of further motivation to turn around in St. Paul this weekend. Yes, I did just compare this Huskies team to the 1980 Olympic team. But hey, it's been done. So there's precedent for it.
And also, Huskies era semifinals at the Frozen Faceoff have been
they've been a little better than Denver.
Been a little bit better at Denver. So they do have that type of numbers on their side. So it's King and Rizzo both did not play against Minnesota Duluth. and they obviously handled Minnesota Duluth, where St. Cloud struggled against Minnesota Duluth. So it's hopefully it's the second season right now. All of those other things doesn't matter. Huskies need to win right now to get that season to continue. And it's gonna be a really fun tournament. I'm really excited for this Frozen Faceoff, probably more so than normal, because kind of another reason why I really wanted St. Cloud State to. Whoa, do we have breaking news? I think we have breaking news here on the podcast.
This is not a bit, is it?
No.
Is this a bit?
No, straight up. Aaron Portzline hearing that Chris Bergeron is out at Miami head coach. 35, 116 and 16 and 5 seasons for Omaha. So Omaha's going to be, or not Omaha, sorry, Miami. Miami's going to be looking for a new coach.
I said this, watch Mondays after a team's season ends, watch the heads roll on Monday, because Ron Fogarty for Princeton was also fired today.
Yep.
And so they took a week, because they were already done last weekend. So they dilly-dallied for a little bit. But Bergeron comes back from Grand Forks, and they say, thanks for going on that trip, that mercy trip, and I'll hand the keys over.
Yeah.
And we'll let you go. So not a huge surprise, but I'm glad that we can offer some breaking news that will be not so breaking by the time.
Not so breaking by the time you listen.
You already knew that, Dan Jacobson, that Chris Bergeron was fired, but we didn't know.
We didn't know. That was our live. No, reaction. That was not a bit. I looked. So yeah.
I thought you were doing like an Omaha finally made the tournament bit.
No, but hey, I did call that again.
I've got to go back to. I haven't listened to the old.
Don't take this
podcast.
Away from me. Do not take this away. I get like 3 calls right a year.
I'll lend
Damn
it to you for now, but I'm not going to confirm it until I go back and verify.
You
what you
check the
said.
tape. Yeah, go to your little tablet. Go to a review, because you love reviews so much, and I want receipts.
This is what we've got off-season podcasts for this reason exclusively. So yes.
But anyway, I really wanted St. Cloud State to win, obviously, because I'm a St. Cloud State fan. I wanted the season to continue, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But either if it was Colorado College or Omaha against North Dakota, I thought there were some really intriguing storylines there, with Omaha sweeping North Dakota the last weekend of the season, and then Colorado College being 4-0 against North Dakota.
UND would be 1-7 combined against those two teams.
Yeah.
This year.
So I was
3 of those in overtime, but still.
Yeah. So I'm actually really looking forward to that matinee game, probably more than I have been looking forward to a non-Huskies game, probably since some of those Minnesota, North Dakota games. Those are always really fun to be part of. But yeah, so it's so happy also that things kind of shook out that way. Probably would have liked CC maybe a little bit more than Omaha, but I think Omaha is kind of they're on a good ride right now, and it's going to be also what's going to happen with the tournament and how the brackets are going to fall, because there's some perplexion that's going to end up happening on the committee.
Oh, there's going to be a lot of difficult bracketing.
Providence has ended, so that's RIP to that one.
Yeah, I want to get to that. Let's put
okay.
A pin in that.
All right, sorry.
You mentioned we'll kind of do a little Frozen Faceoff preview with. You're already kind of getting into this. Duluth not making it this year. Duluth season's done.
Yep, they are.
No more.
Keep your eyes on the transfer portal. See who's jumping ship.
Yep. And so we got Dakota against Omaha in the early game. What is that? 4:00 your time?
Sorry to do we want to touch on any of the other series beforehand before we go? I mean, really the only other series that matters, or do you want to do
in the NCHC?
Yeah, or NCHC, or all
Okay,
around
we'll
college hockey? What do you want? What do you want?
We're going to get to all of college hockey in a little bit. We'll finish the NCHC section here.
Okay.
You were wrong, and Chris Bergeron also is saddened that you were wrong that they did not win a game in North Dakota. You predicted that one.
I did. Well, I did amend it a little bit by saying one of the games would be a lot closer than it should be. Yeah, that didn't happen either. So
2 blowouts. And 2 blowouts without person in net for North Dakota.
Hobie.
Which either that's like kind of a heel move from Barry saying, we'll just beat you with our backup. But then again, you'd think that person would want to be there because he's playing his old team, extra motivation, all that kind of thing. So that leads me to believe there's some sort of injury concern, which I'm curious on who's going to play in net. That could be a big factor with that Omaha and North Dakota game, which both of those teams look to be 100% in the vaunted matrix.
CHN pairwise probability matrix.
So from that perspective, it doesn't hold as much weight as the St. Cloud Denver game does, because St. Cloud has everything to play for in that game. Whereas all the other 3 teams are all locks to make the field. There's obviously playoff seeding at stake with the North Dakota and Omaha, which again, I want to touch on that a little bit later. But we had North Dakota, no problem with Miami. Duluth, as you mentioned, smoked by Denver. And so not really much to add with those series. And then you had the 2-3 gamers. And obviously we've talked a lot about the St. Cloud Western Michigan series and then the CC Omaha series. That one goes 3 games. Overtime win for CC in game 1, and then wins for Omaha in games 2 and 3 to win that series and go to the first conference semifinal since 2001. They hadn't made a neutral site phase of a conference tournament since 2005, but that was in the Super 6 era of the CCHA where they was playing those play-in games, so that wasn't a semifinal game. So the first semifinal they'll play in a conference tournament since 2001, which is just nuts. 2 leagues ago. Would have been in George W. Bush's 2nd month in office. The last time that they in a building, Joe Louis Arena, that doesn't exist anymore.
Pre 9/11.
Pre 9/11.
to tell you how long it's been.
A long time ago, 23 years. Mm-hmm. So they're finally at the X for the first time ever. I wonder if they ever played like a icebreaker or something. Have they ever played at the XL Energy Center?
I don't think so.
Would not think so. So making some history for that program. I did a little research on Omaha, and I'm really getting annoyed by them, which I know that this isn't going to sit well with you, because you are the Omaha fan of this show, and I'm sure you were stoked. I mean, are you going to be wearing your Omaha jersey for that game against North Dakota?
No, I'm actually going to be wearing my newly acquired women's Sexy Reds hockey jersey to the XL Energy Center.
There you go.
So thank you, that. Olivia Hansen, for when you transferred to Clarkson a couple of years ago, leaving your jersey so I could eventually buy it. So shout out to Colin Jacobson, who said I can let everyone know that it's okay, that he's not going to get any type of punishment or anything along those lines. Otherwise, I would have kept all of my contacts secret. But he was.
We've got another Jacobson involved in this show.
They're everywhere.
I know
they're everywhere. So
Omaha.
I'm really excited to what you dug up.
Oh, I spent a good 20 minutes digging stuff up. Mentioning Duluth, they're like a Duluth for me this year. They're a Duluth in gray jerseys, from what I can tell. In that I don't really understand how they're winning these games. for the season, they've outscored their opponents by 6 total goals. And the first game of the year, they played Niagara and won 8-1. So from the first game of the year, since then, they've been outscored on the year. Which, if you're doing like baseball does this, called Pythagorean win-loss record. If you're above 50,
A squared plus B squared equals C
squared. You should
squared.
be like 500 for the year if your goal differential is right about even. But yet they're like 22 and 11 and a bunch of ties. Lots of overtime wins, 6 overtime wins, 1 overtime loss. I just went back and just changed those all to ties. That would have dropped them down 2 spots. So they've really been benefited by the 3-on-3, which, side rant, we seriously need to do something about the 3-on-3 overtime. We're in conference tournaments and we're coming in the NCAA tournaments where we're doing 20-minute 5-on-5 overtimes. If the 3-on-3 isn't good enough for the most important hockey of the year, why are we doing it for the majority of the season, the regular season? And with the 66-33 home and road splits then also factored into that, it's confusing. I think what you should do is just have the pairwise count for the 60 minutes. After 60 minutes, it goes in the books as a pairwise tie. Everything, if you want to do a 3-on-3, or if you want to do a shootout after that for conference points and whatnot, for fun, for the fans, knock yourself out. For pairwise purposes, I think that we should just do 60 minutes of 5-on-5. Stop the game. Stop it at that point.
Stop the count.
If it's tied, just count that as a pairwise tie. Because I think teams like CC and Omaha have really bumped themselves up because of 3-on-3 play. And then conversely, St. Cloud, or Western Michigan as well, teams that aren't good on 3-on-3 have been negatively affected by a 3-on-3. If it's not good enough to play when it matters the most, why are we playing it in the regular season? Or why do we have as much at stake in the regular season with the 3-on-3? Clown hockey seems to be a phrase catching on. It's got a big effect here.
Catches on with me. I don't know.
You're not the only one. I think it's catching on. I think the shine again. I feel like the offsides reviews, that wave is kind of crested in terms of people are more willing to get rid of offsides reviews. I don't think the wave is crested for 3-on-3. I think there's still some defenders of 3-on-3, but for hardcore fans that notice that, yeah, like the first year of it might have been novel and exciting, but when teams and coaches and players glommed onto the fact that it's mostly a possession game, less of let's just do 2-on-1s back and forth, it became less exciting because of that. Because it is kind of more taking the puck out of the zone and just waiting around. It's not as exciting as it was planned to be. I just think for a overall parity equity of the game, let's just base the pairwise on 5-on-5. Again, side rant, but Omaha's been a big benefit of those overtime.
I do not disagree. And I think that's also a clear, concise way to go about it too. Just saying that it's, there's a clear endpoint, and it's just like, this is actual hockey of when it matters. It's that 5-on-5, and keep it like that. So I do like your idea. I will say that. So I am in agreement, because that 3-on-3 for me as well it's lost its luster.
So there's that. So barely outscoring their opponents this year. They've actually been outshot this year by their opponents, which is rare. The only other team that's currently in the NCAA field that is being outshot by their opponents this year is UMass. We'll get to them as well, because I think UMass is in a similar boat here. This is a team that really doesn't they don't really excel in any one area. Special teams, their power plays at 17.8%. It's good for 44th in the country. Their penalty kill, 77.8%, also 44th in the country. Nice little symmetry there.
Little parallel.
Both
right there.
Bottom 20 in special teams category.
That really surprised me when I was watching their series. After the Huskies game ended, I flipped over to that because obviously that was the only other competitive matchups. But yeah, when I looked at Omaha's stats, their special teams, I'm like, wow, they don't really have a lot going on there.
Goal scoring's right around average, a little bit below average for goals per game, a little bit better from goals against per game, but in the 20s, again, not standing out. The only top 10 category the only category that they're in the top 10 is faceoff percentage, which they're 9th, which you'd rather be in the top 10 than not in faceoff percentage. But that even makes it more curious as like the fact that they get outshot by their opponents, yet they're supposedly gaining control after winning a good amount of their faceoffs. So factor that into the overall picture of them barely outscoring their opponents and getting outshot by their opponents, is that they do fairly well in faceoffs, which again, getting back to like the Salt quiz from early in the season, can be a fickle stat. Yes, there's teams like Quinnipiac and Wisconsin. They're also in the top 10 for faceoff percentages, but there's also teams like Air Force and Long Island that are in the top 10 for faceoff percentage. So it's not like it's a recipe for NCAA success. If you want to get into the fancier stats, talking about the shots on goal and the shot attempts, Corsi, which is like the fancy stat that calculates shot attempts, in particular even strength shot attempts. This is a fancy stat that a lot of stat heads look at as far as which are the better possession teams. And generally, if you're controlling possession at even strength, that's a more accurate stat rather than pure shots on goal. The shot attempts at even strength is a good gauge of how well a team controls the play. They're below 50% in Corsi. It's 37th nationwide. There's no teams below them in Corsi who's still alive for the NCAAs. The only team that's close to them is Minnesota, is actually just at 50%. They're like a 32nd in the country. So they're an outlier in that regard. They don't really possess the puck to the extent that most postseason qualifiers do. They're getting outshot, as I mentioned. I looked at the second half of the year since 2024 started, since January, which they're on a nice run, 13-6-2. And that includes an 8-0-1 or 8-1-1 mark, I believe, in the last 10. They've been kind of a heater here. Of those 21 games, they have been outshot in 16 of them. They have been outshot by 10 plus shots in 11 of those games. So more than half of their games, they're being outshot by more than 10. Yet they're just aces in 1-goal games. 16 1-goal wins this year, 2 1-goal losses, which is just an unsustainable statistic. It's just you're getting luck is what that indicates. And it's you just look at this run they've been having. It's been just mostly 1-goal games. This is what we saw in the third game at Colorado Springs, 2-1 victory. Their top scorer, Tanner Lutke, he's got 28 points. The only other team that's currently a NCAA qualifier that doesn't have a 30-plus point score is UMass. Said I was getting back to them, which similarly to Omaha just does not have the kinds of underlying stats in their favor. UMass is kind of the Omaha of the East this year. And similarly, they've had some fortunate schedule breaks this year because their biggest wins, they've got 4 wins combined against Denver and North Dakota. And 3 wins against North Dakota, 1 in overtime, and then 1 win in Denver. That Denver win, however, that was the game they had to postpone after the first period because of ice issues at Magnus.
Well, yeah.
So they ended up resuming that game on a Sunday with like 1,000 people in the stands. It was like a COVID game with like no crowd. They had just gotten smoked the night before by 4 goals. And so they were able to win a game, a rescheduled game, a 2-period game on a Sunday. A little cheesy. Big win for them, though, and they're winning at Denver. 4-goal loss on Friday to Denver, I should say, too. The 2 1-goal losses they have this year, they have double the amount of 4-goal losses. They've lost by 4 different times this year, which, again, gets to their very close to being outscored, like the very slight difference in outscoring their opponents. You got to factor that into it, too. They played a very easy non-conference schedule at home against Long Island, at home against Niagara, at home against a bad Ohio State team who they couldn't even beat. They beat Lowell in this Arizona State tournament. Lowell was terrible this year. They played Augustana, who's not very good. Their non-conference record schedule is maybe a tick better than Western Michigan's, which is to say not good. So even though dominating in games against those bad teams with shots and outscoring those opponents, factor that into the whole mix here in their conference action against actual decent competition. Not the best team. So you had that nice little kind of schedule quirk in Denver that they were able to sneak out of there with a win. And then those 2 North Dakota wins at the end of the year, I think it's a big thing there too. So North Dakota had wrapped up the Penrose the week before. So, and they didn't, even with that sweep at the hands of Denver, they didn't move from the 3 overall seed in pairwise. So they didn't have a ton to play for that weekend. I guarantee you if North Dakota needed to, like they hadn't clinched the Penrose going into that series, they would not have been swept by Omaha. So I think that was a bit of a schedule break for them too, getting a Omaha or a North Dakota team at a time where there wasn't a ton on the line for North Dakota to play for at that weekend. So it just, those little things, it just, you add them all up, and it's just like,
up.
I'm annoyed by this team. And now we're getting into the fact that they're 100% locked to make the tournament. They're going to be in a host regional, which again, it's just, it's the Red Sea is parting here. And for Omaha to
Omaha gets
here,
all the breaks.
I'm less worried about the home regional aspect because this isn't for sure, because there could be some movement based on the Frozen Faceoff. But if North Dakota is going to be at that regional along with Omaha, it's going to be a North Dakota regional for all intents and purposes. They're going to have the cheering advantage. They're going to have the fan advantage. Even in a game versus Omaha in like a regional final situation. However, if there's like North Dakota ends up as a 2 seed and Omaha's a 3, that probably means North Dakota is going to Maryland Heights probably. So there is a chance that they could host that regional without North Dakota there, which the way that it's playing out probably is what is going to happen, unfortunately. So the one thing I'll give them is Latkozi's been playing really well for them. I think they do have an above average goaltender, but they don't really have much of an offense. Like I said, their special teams are nothing to sneeze at. They just don't, I don't really know what exactly this team does well, but you blinked and all of a sudden they go from 7th in the conference to like the 11th overall seed in pairwise, and they're going to be hosting a regional. It just kind of took me by complete surprise, and I'm not a huge fan of it, which I realize is punching down because it's Omaha, but I still don't like cheesy teams getting into the tournament, and this I think qualifies along with UMass. I'll separate that out as well. I think UMass is also a fraud too, but not a huge. I'm not on the Omaha bandwagon to say the least. All right, rant over.
Oh, that was impressive.
Did you tie me on that?
Yeah.
Let's go back to see what just isolate that put that in the show notes, whatever the exact time frame of that rant was.
Yeah. And also, I mean, with that, and again, you can say that that's a flaw in the pairwise too. But you're looking at, they sweep Miami, and they're sitting at 17th in the pairwise. And then, like you said, North Dakota, after North Dakota's wrapped everything up, they jump up to 12. They moved up 5 spots after that sweep. So, basically with Omaha, I don't feel Omaha is going to go very far in Andrew's NCAA bracket, in the Whiskey Dave bracket.
Well, no, if I'm having Duluth fears, I might just slot them into the Frozen Four. You know what I mean? Why not?
Why not?
And just like the game 3 out in CC, 2-1, get used to that score. Because I think that's what's going to be if they're going to win games. It's going to be a bunch of 2-1 games.
2-1, get outshot by 10.
Yep.
So, but, all right. Well, you just killed all my excitement for the Omaha UND series that I had.
Well, so I mean, I guess we could talk about. I'm sure you've played around with Tool
a little bit, not as much as I would like to, because I had to work today.
You can really get in the weeds, and obviously I didn't go with all of the possible scenarios, but just some big picture things to keep in mind for St. Cloud this weekend. Number one is you got to beat Denver.
Yep.
There's no scenario where St. Cloud loses to Denver that they're going to make the tournament. There are scenarios where you can beat Denver and then lose the title game and still get in. In those cases, obviously the easiest path is just to win the Frozen Faceoff. Then there's no sweating it out with any of the other conference tournaments. You're going to be the auto qualifier if you win the conference tournament. But beyond that, needing to beat Denver, that's a must. And then you really need Quinnipiac to win the ECAC. Mm-hmm. I didn't find, there might be one out there. I couldn't find it, a scenario where a St. Cloud loss in the title game and anyone else except Quinnipiac winning the ECAC would result in St. Cloud making the field. So root for Quinnipiac this weekend. And if anyone else from the ECAC wins that tournament and St. Cloud does not win the NCHC, I'm pretty sure that means St. Cloud's out. So root for the Q. Generally, chalk is what you want to go with the other conference tournaments, like BC winning Hockey East. I've seen different results with Michigan State and Michigan. There are some scenarios where, depending on who wins, it's better for the Huskies. Same with, I don't know why. I did some calculations with flipping the CCHA winner between Tech and Bemidji, and I don't know why. There's some scenarios where if Tech wins, they're out, and if Bemidji wins, they're in. Just with flipping that game with other scenarios also in play, I'm not sure why that matters as much as it does, but there's that possibility. And then,
well, I would imagine our RPI goes up with our 2 wins against Bemidji.
Yeah, I wouldn't think it would be that big of an effect, but
I mean, where the RPI is right now for these bunch of teams kind of slotted in there. Yeah, I mean, minuscule ones can flip a comparison.
Yeah. I found one scenario where St. Cloud would be 14 and in. This is with them not beating Denver, but then losing the title game. I found one scenario where St. Cloud was in. CC was the last team out, so they'd be 15th. CC would have a higher RPI than St. Cloud, but St. Cloud would win that because CC lost that Augustana game. I was kind of rooting for that because I don't know if that's happened, where the last team out would have actually had a higher RPI than the last team in. But that's a possibility. It's really looking like CC. It's kind of getting between CC and the Huskies. If there isn't a ECAC champ other than Quinnipiac, it's possible that both of those teams are out. Like if St. Cloud does not win the NCHC tournament, and then if another ECAC team other than Quinnipiac wins, it's possible that both of those teams could get out. But I think there's scenarios where an ECAC team can get in and CC can get in. But again, there's a lot of different scenarios out there. You can kind of go crazy looking at all the different implications. But in general, just root for the Huskies to beat Denver and root for Quinnipiac. Those are your 2 big ones.
Yeah. And how does Cornell factor into all this? I didn't get a real chance to play into that because Cornell right now is sitting at 15, I believe. But
according to the last time I looked at the matrix, they need to win that. They cannot get in as an at-large.
At-large, yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking at the matrix. The only ECAC team that can be an at-large is Quinnipiac. So Cornell, Dartmouth, and St. Lawrence all need to win the tournament in order to get in the dance. Gotcha. So they are not an at-large. They do not have an at-large chance. Meaning if they beat Dartmouth but then lose to Quinnipiac, still is not going to be enough for Cornell. Yeah, the only teams that haven't locked up their spot but still have at-large possibilities is Western, which is at 99%, UMass, which is 91% overall. But then you got CC at 49% and then St. Cloud at 21%. Those are the teams that still have at-large capabilities left, meaning they cannot win their conference tournament. Obviously, Western's already out, and CC's already out too. But UMass is still alive in Hockey East, and St. Cloud obviously still alive in the NCHC. But no other team can get an at-large. So anyone else that's playing this weekend that is not already locked up, or those, UMass or St. Cloud, they've got to win their conference tournament. And I'm mentioning it's going to be a real headache for the committee this year, for a few factors. Well, I just want to circle back to Atlantic hockey, because our Bees, we saw. I mentioned this possibility when they were going out to Air Force. They needed to win a road series at Air Force. Then they needed to go on the road and beat Holy Cross. Well, they did both of those things. Now they have a one and done against RIT to whoever wins that game will be the Atlantic champ. And it's been clinched that either one of those teams, whoever wins that game, will be the 15th seed. And so the 16th seed will be the CCHA winner. So Atlantic hockey has frog hopped the CCHA on the totem pole, so to speak, in terms of conference supremacy. So that's the scenario for both of those leagues. But the AIC one was so interesting because they are co-hosting ? The Springfield Regional, which was my understanding the entire year, is that this is an odd year where both UMass and AIC are co-hosting a regional, this Springfield Regional. It's what CHN has on their website. I dug into the press release from the, what's it called? The Mass Mutual Center in Springfield, where the venue of this regional. This press release: Mass Mutual Center, American International College, and the University of Massachusetts announce the game dates for this regional. And it'll be held from Thursday, March 28th and Saturday, March 30th. That will lead me to assume that American International and UMass are the two hosts. But then I look on the NCAA website, their official tournament website. They list the host of that regional as the University of Massachusetts and the Western Massachusetts Sports Commission, which they do not list AIC there. Yeah, and so I need to get some confirmation here, because this is a big deal.
Yeah, what the heck? Where are we
at
with this, Woden?
Because if AIC wins that game against RIT, and UMass, definitely if they lose to BC, who they're playing on Friday, they're going to be a 4 seed. Even if they beat BC and then lose the title game, they're still probably going to be a 4 seed. There are scenarios where they could move up to a 3 seed. But if they're both 4 seeds, they obviously can't be both in Springfield. And the way I was seeing it, because the other big problem for the committee is that we got BC at number 1, we got BU at number 2. Those are locked in. No matter what happens this weekend, that will be the 1-2 seeding. BC at 1, BU at 2. Right now we've got Denver at 3 and North Dakota at 4. And so we've got 2 NCHC teams with the other 2 number 1 seeds. But as I mentioned, we got the 16th seed will be the CCHA winner. The 15th seed will be the Atlantic hockey winner. The other 2 4 seeds, however, very well could be, there's probably going to be a NCHC team in one of the other 2 4 seeds. Like right now, it's currently 13 at Western and 14 at CC, which, if we're going bracket integrity, that would line up to Denver and North Dakota, which that's interconference games in the first round. So in order
CC
to avoid that, it would be, if you're strictly going bracket integrity, it would be Western versus Denver and CC versus North Dakota.
Okay, got it.
And then it would be the Atlantic champ against Boston University, and it would be the CCHA champ against Boston College. Now, how they could avoid that is they'd send Bemidji to North Dakota, and then they'd put the Atlantic team against Denver. And then they put the NCHC teams against BC and BU, which they like to protect the number 1 overall seed, and giving them the 14th overall seed with a significant RPI gap between those 2 teams. BC would not be happy with that. BU would not be happy with that. So there's that. I think there's, and with the AIC UMass thing, it would be much easier to solve that problem by having AIC play in Springfield against BU. You can't play UMass against BU because they're a Hockey East opponent if UMass was going to fall into a 4 seed. So UMass can't play those two teams in the first round. And so the problem here is I think we're looking at a scenario where there's going to be a broken rule this year in some way. Some usually ironclad rule that the committee applies is going to have to be sacrificed this year, I think, because they have a couple of outs. With the whole UMass AIC thing, it seems like it could just be UMass getting the host seed, and then they would send AIC out somewhere else. But that would go against kind of, if again, that is what the case is, that AIC technically isn't the host, meaning they don't need to be there. I guess that would solve it, but from their perspective, it would be much easier if AIC was in that Springfield regional rather than UMass from a seeding perspective. But then you've also got the possibility of having 5 NCHC teams in the field. You also have 4 Big Ten teams in the field. Those are over half the teams in those leagues making the tournament. Which again, I was seeing if there was an actual official rule. I don't know if it's just an informal rule, but if there are over half the teams in a league, they can bypass that rule of avoiding interconference games in the first round, which I believe they've only done once, and that was in the vaunted Wisconsin rule year.
Wisconsin rule update.
Where they put Denver and Wisconsin in the first round because you had 6, I believe, WCHA teams making the field that year. But I'm saying that's a possibility. I'm not saying it's a great possibility because they really try to avoid that. But if it's something where you'd have to give Boston College, the top seed, an NCHC team rather than either the CCHA or the Atlantic winner, I think they would rather put like Denver versus Western in the first round than giving the number 1 overall seed a much tougher first round game. And then you also, with the Big Ten too, like right now you have Minnesota at 8 and Wisconsin at 9, and then even Michigan at 10. You have a clump of Big Ten teams right around the 2 and the 3 seed. Like if you're going to do bracket integrity, the 8-9 matchup would be Minnesota versus Wisconsin. Well, we know they try to avoid that. Mm-hmm. But if you're trying to avoid that, you can't have Minnesota play Michigan either at 10. And so you would have to have something like Minnesota 8 versus 11, 7 versus 10, 6 versus. I mean, you get tied up in knots here with trying to avoid those interconference games. It would be just much easier if they just said, let's just put 8-9 Minnesota versus Wisconsin in the first round. You could then retain the bracket integrity if you were to violate the rule of not having the first round matchup be an interconference game. I think there's going to be some traditional rule of putting teams in brackets that they're going to have to sacrifice this year because of host schools. Again, we have a possibility of Omaha and North Dakota being like a 4-1 matchup or even a 3-2 matchup. Like that's going to be a decision they would have to make. Who do we send North Dakota away, or do we put North Dakota? Do we put that as a first round matchup? Like, I think there's going to be a very interesting bracket this year, and it's going to be some very difficult decisions for the committee to make, and it's all going to be settled at the end of this weekend. But I do think this Sunday, when we get the bracket reveal, it's probably going to be a lengthier article on CHN with the head of the committee having to explain things, because I think this year's there's going to be some unique and maybe even unprecedented moves in the bracket, and there's going to be some explaining to do, I think. And it's going to be a very difficult episode for me to pick the field, just throwing that out there. But you're right in that the Providence not being in Providence, that saves them a little bit of work, I think. But I think with the UMass thing, and then you got Omaha being a host, and that creates some issues, and then the interconference matchups, and it's not going to be easy, and I'm very interested to see how it all shakes out.
Yeah, like they have to have some kind of a plan for if multiple schools host a regional, what happens? Because they've had that in the past. They've had whole conferences host in the past.
Right, but I don't think with a conference hosting, like I know the ECAC, I think the ECAC hosted that Albany regional that St. Cloud won in 21. I think that was Union / the ECAC. But I don't know who actually hosts the regional.
Yeah.
I'm going to take the NCAA's word for it more than CHN. Sorry, Woden. But
he'll come up
this
with
entire
an excuse
season,
anyway.
I've been thinking about this scenario for the entire season. Like once we saw UMass was going to be a contender this year, I was thinking that would be fascinating if they're both at that regional and they're both the same seed. Because then what do? You could have I think Woden is. I'm more on his side when he's talking about the rigidity of the bands, the 1, 2, 3, 4 seed bands, about how it being silly to use the pairwise and just strictly go by the seeding, by the order of the pairwise. And then when you assign the teams into seeds, that those are unimpeachable, unmovable. Once you're a 4 seed, you can't be moved to the 3 seed band. But again, if there is something where both UMass and AIC make the tournament as 4 seeds, there would be one just make UMass the 3 seed, switch them out with somebody else. You'd then have both AIC and UMass at the Springfield Regional. But again, that's unprecedented. They haven't done that. They've had first round interconference matchups before they screw with placing a team from the 4 seed to the 3 seed band. That's like a unimpeachable sin. So, like I said, there's going to be something that we've either just very rarely seen before or never seen before, I think, in this final bracket that we see on Sunday. And I'm still rooting for AIC to make this a possibility. Like if they lose that game, it's going to just be disappointing because we won't even know what would have happened, even if they aren't the official co-host. But it's still going to be like with them, if it is just UMass, that might create more problems. Because then you're going to have, what's going to happen is you're going to have one of these, either North Dakota or Denver, going to have to go to Springfield to play UMass if UMass is still in the 4 seed band. And that means like a Boston team, a Massachusetts team is not going to be in Springfield as the 1 seed. You're going to have to move mountains there in order to jive with all the rules that they've got overlapping here. So it's anyone's guess, and I'm excited for chaos.
Yeah,
because I think we all are.
What we're rooting for this weekend is 1, the Huskies, 2, chaos. Just especially since we're in a position where we're going to be thrilled if we make the tournament, but I don't know about you. I don't have much aspirations of making a run with how this team has performed.
Just get to the tournament.
Just get to the tournament.
That's what we've learned. Just get to the tournament. Anything can happen.
So I'm not going to be all up in arms about whatever seedings or whatever bracket comes out and where Huskies are placed. So we might as well just get to chaos and watch
it's
it.
It's going to be just like there's a non-zero chance if they make the tournament. They're like the 13th seed. They could play BU in that first game. They could play BU.
Bring them on
in Maryland Heights, which makes no sense from either the seeding or from the home ice or geographical sense.
Yep.
And so it's bring it on.
Yep. We haven't touched on it yet. Michigan Tech, CCHA, Michigan Tech, Bemidji State. That's a Friday game, which is kind of that's what CHN has.
It's CHN.
Yeah, I mean that's true. Which,
I'll check on that.
Please do.
Keep tap dancing.
But the big thing is, I kind of wanted to touch on kind of the calamity of errors that happened at the end of that CCHA game between Michigan Tech and Minnesota State, where
apparently is Friday. It's weird. They played it on Saturday the last couple of years, but Maybe they're thinking.
Did they rent out the Sanford Center already? Bemidji already was like, wait, I didn't expect you to host the title game. Like, we got.
Yeah, maybe they booked Incubus on Saturday.
Hey,
and
hey, I would go to that. Are you kidding me?
Did you go to it when they came to St. Cloud? They played Hollenbeck, I think,
Yeah.
my freshman year.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I didn't go. It's not like I'm a huge Incubus fan, but
I'd
heard of them, and I'm like, oh wow, it's good. That's good. It's
a good get
to the university. Yeah.
So,
but yeah, they were playing on Friday. I saw a little bit. So they had like a penalty shot. They called a penalty shot for Michigan Tech to tie that game. Is that right?
They called a penalty shot, to tie the game late for a glove puck.
Over the puck. Yeah.
However, replays have shown, again, going back to replay, that wasn't the case.
Did they call it a penalty shot in real time?
Yes. So I guess I don't know if it's reviewable play. Maybe it's not a reviewable play to call a penalty shot. It feels like it should be.
I for some reason I'm okay with that more than if they wouldn't have called it in real time and then would have saw the replay and then called a penalty shot. That would sit less well with me. But and then I think was there a goal at or I think there was a Michigan Tech goal earlier in the game that was kind of dicey, a potential like kicked in goal that they didn't review. And so I did catch a little bit of seeming like there was some controversy, which for CCHA playoffs is about par for
which is normal. I'd be worried if it wasn't. Well, they did review the goal that almost, or for the Colorado College Omaha series in overtime on Friday's game that Colorado College ended up winning. That went to a review, and I thought that might have been kicked in.
And they took off a goal for Omaha yesterday in the Sunday game for an offsides review, which I didn't think was conclusive.
Nope. But anyway, the overhead view of the Minnesota State Michigan Tech game, which my Michigan Tech Huskies, my prediction is still alive somehow, I will say.
And I have been betting against Bemidji State the entire year, which I'm all in on the Beavs. I'm going Bemidji.
Not
baby.
the Beavs. Not the Beavs.
I'm more a Bees fan than the Beavs. But why not?
Yeah. Just let's get weird. But Michigan Tech then ends up winning the game with 9 seconds left to go. With 9 seconds.
How many seconds?
9 seconds on what was essentially a dump in.
Well, I didn't see that.
And then apparently it just hit the end boards, came back, and it was just a fluke bounce. It bounced off the back of the goaltender of Mankato's goaltender, and it went in.
Are you kidding?
Yeah, it was just.
I gotta Google this or something.
You gotta look at Logan Piela's goal right at the end.
I didn't catch it because it's the CCHA playoffs, but I guess I missed quite a show.
Yeah. You never know what you're going to get with the CCHA. That's the beauty of the CCHA. Get a ticket. Get on board. Who knows what shenanigans are going to happen here on Friday night?
Friday night, yes, again, because it can't be Saturday.
Because there's a Beach Boys cover band that rented the Sanford Center.
Bob Seger is farewell tour.
Yeah,
they booked that 2 years ago.
So, but yeah, I found that interesting. So
maybe we can do some just quick predictions. So you're taking Tech.
I'm taking Tech. I've gone with them the whole time. I might as well. Although I like the Beavers story, so it's one of those things. Is I'm sticking on the Tech bandwagon, but I kind of like to see the Beavers kind of come out of nowhere and take the CCHA.
Okay, so I'm putting you down for Tech.
Yep.
And then RIT versus AIC.
I actually think RIT has a pretty solid squad, so I would say RIT kind of continues their.
This is good. So we're not agreeing so far. So this is good. So I'm sticking with the Bees.
Hashtag content.
I'll take AIC. And then Hockey East, which of the leagues, again, UMass at 91%, so they still could drop out. But the other three teams, UMass or BC, BU, and Maine, they're all locks. Perhaps the least compelling tournament this weekend because there's just not a ton to play for. Who do you got coming out of that league?
Again, this is another who I want and who I've got. I want Maine. Like I would like.
I might take them.
Yeah,
because as I mentioned, BC and BU are locked in. They can't move from 1 for BC and 2 for BU. They're going to use this as just rest. I don't think they're even going to put much of an effort. BC still might win with like a half effort. Like, I think they're that good. I don't know if you saw any of that game because I watched like 12 parts of 12 games on Saturday. It was great. But I saw like they were up on UConn like 3-0 about 2 minutes into the game. It looked like 5 minutes maybe. And I'm like, this is going to be a laugher. But then UConn made a game of it, tied it up actually in the third period. They actually had their comeback was fueled by a goal that they scored off of a review from because of course it's college hockey, so a review was involved. But the BC goaltender made a save that was beyond the goal line.
Oh, no way.
They brought it back and they overturned the no goal on the ice call. And I don't know if you could technically see the puck cross the line. So I liked to see that, but UConn made a game of it, but then BC was able to win. So that was kind of an intriguing game, but
we've talked about
they're tough.
We've talked about BC and how they've been able to kind of just coast throughout this season, really. However, that was a 5-4 win against Connecticut, a 6-4 win against Merrimack, 1-0 against New Hampshire. They've kind of slowed it down a little bit here, and maybe, like you said, maybe it's all just rest and geared up for a playoff push, but maybe
I will.
a little bit
it's the NCAA tournament. It's a roulette wheel. Anything can happen, but I will say I think BC's the best team in college hockey in the last 10 years. They're the most dynamic team I've seen in a while.
Yeah,
and I think that Fowler is a good goaltender. He gave up 4 against UConn, so I guess he can look at that and get worried, but I think they're
two
really
of them were to
team.
Matthew Wood, though.
Who's good. I think one of them was the goal that he saved beyond the goal line, which you shouldn't be able to overturn, according to some people. But Todd Anderson wasn't in the building then.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
It had something to do with it. But I'm not saying that BC is going to win the whole thing, but they are the best team in college hockey, I would say. So, and I don't feel like I need to see a ton more to further convince me. But
sure enough. Yep.
Who knows? Maybe Bemidji will go in there and spank him. Wouldn't that be something?
But yes, I am going. I'm going BC overall, but I'm pulling for Maine.
I think I'll pick Maine just because I feel like they're a good story, and yes, they don't have a ton to play for themselves, except for jockeying for position in the 2-seed band. But they might just be a little hungrier.
Who knows this year what these bands are going to do? Maybe they throw the bands out the window.
Maybe that would not be good news for Michigan Tech because their band is a good band.
their band is the best in the biz. So,
and then what do we got? ECAC. Is it Quinnipiac or anybody else?
Quinnipiac versus the Field. I'm taking Quinnipiac.
Said this a couple months ago. Like they've only won one of these ECAC tournaments, and it's kind of like with BC. Like they've just got bigger aspirations beyond an ECAC tournament title. That's kind of the only thing. They get St. Lawrence for the first game. St. Lawrence is currently the lowest team in pairwise still alive.
They're not
at
good.
45. They were able to upset Colgate this weekend. That would shock me if St. Lawrence were to beat Quinnipiac. It really wouldn't shock me if either Dartmouth or Cornell were to beat them in the title game. I think those are teams that are decent. they're decent ECAC teams, meaning that they're not great, but ECAC is not a great league. I don't think Quinnipiac is as good as they were last year. Not much of a shock there because they won the whole thing last year. But it's hard for the odds-on favorite, the only team in the field, to just because they didn't do this last year even, Quinnipiac. So I would love to see it happen because obviously it's a big rooting interest for St. Cloud fans is for Quinnipiac to take care of business there. But I don't know. If you're going to take Quinnipiac, I'm going to take Quinnipiac too. Just I want the karma there because it helps the Huskies. But if they're not going to win, I'm not going to go Cornell. I'm going to go our guys, Dartmouth. So it'd be kind of fun to have Dartmouth in the tournament because they don't generally make it.
Yeah.
So I'll still go Quinnipiac. But if it can't be them, then I'll go with the Big Green.
And then the mitten matchup. Michigan State, Michigan.
Oh, right. For some reason, I thought you were talking about the CCHA. I'm like, we already talked about that. Forgot. Yeah,
not the mitten boxing fight. They're boxing with mittens there in the ECAC. No, we're talking.
Well, in Michigan Tech's, they're in the scarf. They're not in the mitten of Michigan. So.
They're in the beanie section. They're in the toque.
Right.
The toque fight.
So that's at
the tussle
Michigan
for the
State.
toque.
I like that. At Michigan State, Michigan's playing pretty decent. Seem to be peaking at the right time. I don't know where you're going to go with this. I feel like you might feel like you want to be unique and take Michigan in an upset. I'll go Michigan.
Yeah. I'm not sold on Michigan
Spartans?
State, but I'm
really not either. I'm not sold on either of those teams actually.
But I think Michigan State's gonna win it. They've had Michigan's number this season, winning the last 3. And no shortage of scoring goals in those games. 7-5, 5-1, 3-2 match. But so that's what we got there.
I was playing around with the pairwise on CHN because you can do the customizer. You can fiddle around with stuff. And they give you the option to put the field under the old Tuck Cliff criteria.
Oh, God.
So I just
oh my God. Okay.
For craps and giggles, I put it on there.
Let's do it. Where's Omaha?
I don't think they materially changed. The one big one was Wisconsin was all of a sudden 3rd. They went from 9th to 3rd.
Oh,
like, how does that happen?
Man.
Because the Tuck Cliff, like, I'm thinking like every team would that make every team in the Big Ten a team under consideration? But Ohio State still would have been outside. And maybe that helped them because then their losses to Ohio State in the playoffs might not have. I don't know. That didn't make any sense to me because there wasn't a ton of other movement, but that was like the big hopper. And I'm like, how exactly does that work? They go from a 3 seed to a 1 seed.
Wow.
With the old criteria, but it's pointless. We're not doing that.
It's bizarre that they even have that option that you can click, like you can toggle Tuck Cliff.
They organize the pairwise as if it's the Tuck Cliff still. So it has the Tuck line, and then all the comparisons. Like instead of St. Cloud having 40-something comparisons, St. Cloud would only have 20-some comparisons because the comparisons are only against teams that are in the Tuck.
God,
above the Tuck line. So it's
so many of our listeners are like, "What the heck are you guys talking about?"
CHN has all kinds of Woden articles over the years where he has expressed his views about the pairwise and some interesting ones to boot. Check out the one with Alaska Anchorage playing Wisconsin in the WCHA playoffs. From like 2005, I'm going to say. Maybe 2006.
Is that the one where they would have bumped up in the pairwise if they would have lost?
Because of the Tuck.
Yeah.
They went to a 3rd game in the WCHA playoffs. And if Alaska would have won the 3rd game, that would have made them a team under consideration. And it would have bumped up Wisconsin, even with the loss. So they would have gained in pairwise had they lost the 3rd game against Anchorage. They ended up beating Anchorage, and so as a result, harming their pairwise position. And Woden's correct argument was that you shouldn't have a system where you're incentivized to lose. There was another situation right around that time period with Bentley too. I can't remember the exact particulars of that one, but if Bentley, I think, would have lost, or I think if another one of those ones, or a team, if they would have lost, would have benefited from a loss rather than a win. So yeah, go into those archives and see how it used to be. And I don't know if it's better or worse nowadays, but it's a little less volatile because of that tuck cliff. Because if teams were right skittering on the edge there, it did have a big effect.
That's a bummer. I thought you were going to say Omaha. And another thing about Omaha.
No, all I did with them is I just changed all their overtime results to ties. Because I wanted to see what the effect of that would have been if the pairwise were under my preferred circumstance, which really isn't. If I really want to do that research, I needed to change every game in the country.
Every game in the country,
went to overtime. Yeah. But so just isolating their results, they dropped 2 spots. I would imagine if I changed everybody's results, they probably would drop even further. So,
I mean, and that's something obviously with St. Cloud's overtime record. We would have benefited greatly from that being a tie.
I actually think St. Cloud would have moved up a spot just doing the Omaha ones, because one of those overtime wins for Omaha was that 7-6 debacle.
I remember I did it a few weeks ago, and we went up to, I think, 10th.
I'm sure you go back at the end of the year, any one of those 2-goal lead games that St. Cloud coughed up, or even like the first St. Thomas game, because that's the worst team you've lost to in pairwise this year. I bet it's going to be a difference of one game.
Yeah.
And pick which game you want.
Mankato, Denver, Omaha, where you had 3 2-goal leads.
Yep.
What is
or
it?
the Western Michigan, or the first Duluth game in Duluth.
Yep.
That's a huge one. So yeah,
but
no one to blame except themselves.
Well,
but let's hope that we don't get to that.
Let's not get to that. Let's take care of business this week. So then, what did we do? NCHC? Who do you have for this tournament?
St. Cloud State, baby.
Yep, I agree. Well,
who's going to win that North Dakota Omaha game?
I think it's North Dakota. I think. I do think it's going to be a really good game, though. I think it's going to be a good matchup. But I think St. Cloud's also going to be hungry after they got embarrassed last time. So that's maybe a little bit more homerish than I like, but I think there's just a lot of questions about everybody else. And I like where Posh is at. And I think if we continue to ride them, like I said, I'll be shocked if we play Bassey. I'll say that. I don't think there's a shot in hell that he's going to touch.
If we play Bassey, something catastrophic went wrong.
Yeah. So, but I just think there's just a little bit more depth when it comes to North Dakota, and I kind of like their.
Yeah, I've put forth the argument of how Omaha
quite
is
a bit
as good as their record would indicate. So I don't need to dwell on that anymore. I agree. I will grudgingly pick the green in that game, and yeah, would St. Cloud be able to finally beat North Dakota in a title game at the in a conference tournament? That hasn't happened yet. Well, 0-1,
yep.
Right?
0-1.
But they've had a couple of different chances since then.
Mm-hmm.
And, because 0-6, right after the 8-7 game, they lost that one. 10, they lost in the title game to them. I feel like there's been a couple more. But so we can avenge some previous failures in the conference tournament against this team. And we did it last year in the semifinal. We can grab that magic again this year. But first, got to be Denver. And that's going to be a tough test in and of itself. But I don't know. I've got a good feeling about it. Call me stupid, but I like how they're playing just at this particular second.
So, switch over to the women. As the tournament ends up going all chalk into the Frozen Four on the women's side of it. But a little bit of drama ended up kind of going with it. First off, congratulations on nailing the Stonehill. What was it? Cornell
7-1 over Stonehill.
7-1. And then Colgate was able to take care of business there. Ohio State able to roll, obviously, against Minnesota Duluth 9-0.
And speaking of reviews, would that have been 9-0 UConn over UConn? Because UConn won that game, and then they overturned it for, was it an offsides? And then of course, Duluth comes down and scores. Once they wave that goal off, I'm like, just hand it to Duluth at this point.
Yeah,
just pathetic.
I put a little snip of the Dump and Change podcast with Devin Millwater saying that this is the luckiest team.
Put that on the button board for all time.
Yeah,
because that is an evergreen sound effect.
Yeah, and she did favorite and retweet it, so that was
Devin Millwater.
Devin Millwater did. Yep.
Wow.
So
and the outreach that you're doing for this podcast,
yeah.
I really appreciate you pulling more than you're pulling both of our weight here, which is saying quite a lot. So that's good to know, but it sucks because that meant Duluth won that game.
Duluth won, but then got shellacked.
But then got absolutely creamed by Ohio State.
So, which kind of leads into Dan Jacobson's question. I might as well.
What was that?
Get that. How many did the women's team give up against Ohio State?
Okay.
And then
are we setting up? So
and then
we can have Ed.
How many did Ohio State or how many did Minnesota Duluth give up against Denver? In the series?
I think Principal Ed Rooney has that answer.
Has that answer?
9 times.
And yes, that is correct. 9 goals on both sides.
9 times.
So
they scored on Duluth.
But yeah, I did watch most of the Minnesota Clarkson game.
I tuned in after the first period, so that meant I watched 6 periods of hockey.
One of the tweets that I saw was kind of an interesting one, and it kind of sums up everything. Is that 1 overtime is exciting, 2 it's starting to get a little repetitive, and after 3 overtimes, it's like somebody just end this. Yeah, it's kind of what it was like.
It's a game that Clarkson had to tie up in the last minute or two.
Kind of a fluke goal right out in front. Centering pass.
All the goals
deflected.
kind of were chintzy goals for both teams, I thought. But yeah, as even of a game as you can imagine, I thought that Minnesota was going to win that game. I mean, up 2-0 early in that game.
Early, yeah.
And so it was looking like another one of these. We mentioned the last 2 years, the 5 seeds been able to win that 4-5 matchup on the road. I really do think they need to add a 12th team. Not that, I mean, if there was a 12th team in the field, that meant that Minnesota would have played Stonehill in the first round. It would have meant that Quinnipiac was the last at large, and that it would have meant that Stonehill would have played the Gophers, which the Gophers probably would have beaten Stonehill with a bigger margin of victory than Cornell did at 7-1. So I'm not saying that they would have been tested by Stonehill. It's just the fact of them needing to play another game. I think evens up the playing field. And the fact that they're able to play as much as they can with the 4 seed on the road probably is the fact that they don't have another game under their belt. Like the fact that Duluth got their ass kicked as much as they did, probably a lot to do with the fact that they had to play a double overtime game 2 nights before that. So it's not just the adding the 12th team as much as just giving each of those top seeds, the top 4 seeds who host these regionals, giving them the benefit of their opponent in that regional final to all have a game under their belt. It wouldn't have changed. Like, I'm saying that in order to give that home team an advantage more so than they already have hosting that regional. But it just bugs me that one regional doesn't do that. And I realize that they're just doing 11 because it's the same percentage of total teams that makes the field that the men's team does. And I'm one for the men's side. I want I want a smaller field rather than a larger field. So usually I'm more, let's narrow the field rather than expand it. But in this case, the 3 regionals with 3 teams and then just the 1 regional with 2 teams, it bugs me for like OCD purposes. Just get a 12th team in there, have that first round game, and then have the regional final with those top seeds playing a team that has a game under their belt. I like that idea better. But seeing as like Ohio State just smoking Duluth, seeing them really manhandle the Gophers earlier this year, I think I'm glad that Clarkson won that game. I still think it's Ohio State's tournament to lose, but I think that Clarkson will probably give them more of a test than Minnesota will. It's going to come down to Ohio State and Wisconsin. I think that's going to be the title game. I don't think that's going out on too much of a limb, but I'm more on the Ohio State train than I have been before, and I've been on their train since the start of the season. Are you deviating at all from your Wisconsin pick? Who do you got in the championship game, and who do you have winning?
Yeah, I'm not deviating from Wisconsin actually, but I am really excited to kind of see it be, just kind of an ECAC WCHA tilt. And because all throughout the year, these were the 2 best conferences, and it's nice to see them have equal representation in the Frozen Four and how it's stacked up to where it's, these 2 teams that are against each other, they're, from different conferences, each have a chance. So, versus having 2 WCHA teams versus 2 ECAC teams. So I'm really interested in like what Colgate's going to bring and what Clarkson is going to bring to the teams that we have seen, many times throughout the season. So
you're still going with Wisconsin.
I'm still going with Wisconsin, even over Ohio State. And I think those are the 2, because again, I think the WCHA is the best conference, but I'm excited to see what Colgate does. Really. A little bit more so than Clarkson. So
yeah, I think that Wisconsin Colgate game is going to be a 1-goal game. I think Clarkson's very good. I'm still going to go like 4-rip Ohio State over Clarkson.
I can see
that's more saying just how good Ohio State is.
Mm-hmm.
I think Colgate has a decent chance to win that game against Wisconsin, but I'm still going to take Wisconsin, and I'm still going to take Ohio State in the title game. But it's going to be, I think that title game will be good. So they're playing Friday semifinals and then Sunday for the title game, which I like because that'll be isolated. No men's games goes against it. And so that'll be the Sunday title game, which we're both thinking it's going to be an all WCHA matchup. It would surprise me if Clarkson were to beat Ohio State. It wouldn't shock me if Colgate beat Wisconsin, but I would still imagine that it's going to be those 2 WCHA teams. We did get the final 3 of the Patty Kazmaier award. Kirsten Sims, Casey O'Brien, both from Wisconsin, and then Izzy Daniel from Cornell, which I thought was a little bit of a surprise. I would figure either Serdachny or Colton Kova from Colgate would have stood a better chance than Daniel from Cornell. I would think that maybe Serdachny and Colton Kova maybe canceled each other out playing on the same team, but you could have said that same thing about Sims and O'Brien.
Wisconsin. Yeah,
they didn't cancel each other out. Line mates. I mean, Sims is the top scorer in the country, and O'Brien's right behind her, both with 70+ points this year on the same line. A little surprising to see Daniel get in there from Cornell. I would assume this is going to be Sims's award.
Would you say, though, even with O'Brien and Sims, that Harvey is still the best player on Wisconsin?
I have said that, yes. And earlier in the season, it was Britta Curl was the leading scorer among that bunch. She was the other member of that top line for them. They had, Edwards also had 50-plus points for Wisconsin. They're just a crazy, insanely talented offensive team. Because Sims won the WCHA Player of the Year honors, I'm going to give her the leg up on the Patty Kaz.
Don't say that about Hardigan and Leopold.
It's true. Yeah, you can make the case that O'Brien and Sims could cancel each other out. I just don't see, I would have thought that if it's one of the Cornell players, that they would stand a better chance if they're the one non-Wisconsin player in the final three to maybe snag it. But I'm gonna pick Sims. Are you? Seeming like you want to go with Izzy Daniel. You're a big Izzy Daniel guy.
Yes, as I don't want as I clearly want Wisconsin to win for the women. I don't want them with the Patty Kaz. No, I figure it's going to be Sims. So,
do you have any? I think it would be. So they announced the Patty Kaz last week, like Tuesday, so before the regional. I thought that they announced the top three Hobie after the regional weekend. Perhaps it's because the men's side has the dumb week off.
They have the week off, yeah.
Whereas the women's side does not have that, which I like.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know exactly where. I always thought that they announced the top three after the regional. But if you have a top three, I would say Gautier from BC, Celebrini from BU, and Jackson Blake from North Dakota. Do you have any top three that's any different from those? And I think Gautier is going to win from BC. The big thing there, you can say that the BC top line really cancels him out, but he's not on that Leonard, Smith, and Perot line. He's the second liner for them, but he leads the team in goal, or he leads the country in goals. And goals, Hobie committee loves goals. And he's a second-year player. I think that gives him a leg up from Celebrini. Blake's great, but I think they're going to get they're going to give it to someone on that BC team, and I think Gautier is the one. So that's who I got for the top three. Certainly other candidates if you want to throw any others out there.
What's kind of interesting is that I don't feel like there's a huge, just with how much depth of forward we have this year, I don't see a goaltender making the top 10. Maybe one will get in there, but I think it's going to be the top 10 is going to be light on goaltenders in general. And so we can toss all those out. Even defensemen, I think is going to be kind of tricky for that.
Felt like Lane Hudson would have had a decent shot at the beginning of the year as being like a Hobie, because he was a top three finalist last year. But with Celebrini kind of stealing his thunder on his own team, I feel like he's on the outside looking in, at least for a top three.
I could see Zeev Boyum, who I think is a shoe-in for NCHC Rookie of the Year.
Let's get back to that. I want to touch on the NCHC finalists.
I suppose. Yeah, that was nice too. Yeah, we should do that. But I think there's just forwards. I think it's just too deep this year. So I think it's going to be three forwards in the hat trick, like you have.
Yeah.
I like your picks. I think Blake. It's going to be really young too.
Which Hobie's trending younger.
Yeah. So
we had Fantilli win it last year. They're not as averse to giving it to freshmen as they maybe once were. And there's not like it used to be like weighted heavily towards seniors. I think that's not as true as it may have once been. You got a guy like Colin Graff from Quinnipiac, who I think is got an outside chance. At least to make the top 10, probably. He was injured for a chunk of the year, so he only played 31 games and got 48 points. So he's up there in the points per game category. Shoots up couple of players in that regard, even if he doesn't have the raw number of points as some of those other top scorers do. But yeah, it's you got Rizzo from Denver. He just doesn't have a ton of goals, just with 10 this year. Devine, 27 for Denver.
Yeah,
he's probably going to be in the mix. I mean, Michigan, as always, has got a bunch of candidates. McGroarty's up there. He was hurt for part of the year. Gavin Brindley, 50-point year. You got Seamus Casey's the top scoring defenseman of the year with 44 points. Most of those assists, but they're probably going to get some votes.
And that's tied with Zeev Boyum at 44. So
as far as goalies, I would say that this McClellan from Wisconsin is going to be the Richter winner. It probably would crack the top 10 Hobie, but I doubt he's going to get in the top 3.
Yeah.
Leading the country in save percentage, 24 wins this year, sub 2 goals against. Like a guy like Fowler from BC is going to be up there as well. He's got some gaudy numbers himself, but I think that McClellan's got the inside track to win that award. How about we just kind of handicap some of these NCHC finalists, award finalists? Maybe take a pick for some. We're not going to go through like the student, scholar, athlete of the year. I mean, Dominic Bassey's in that top 3. Go Huskies, woo.
Yep, that's who I'm picking right there.
You imagine because there's Huskies that are nominated for several of these categories. You imagine if the only award winner the St. Cloud has this year is Dominic Bassey as scholar athlete. that would be fitting.
Yep.
I think for St. Cloud's, I think the best chance they got sportsmanship award with Vidi.
With Vidi
Mietinen. I mean, all he needs to do is submit his baseball card and circle the zeros.
0 under penalty minutes.
Penalty minutes. And
all 4.
That.
Maybe 5. Let's get him back for
maybe 5.
Maybe a grad year, no penalties in 5 games or 5 seasons, plus 100 points. So.
I mean, we got Anhorn up for offensive defenseman of the year. Now, you've been waxing poetic about Zeev Buyum. He's up against him and the brother Shai Buyum in that category. So, did the Buyums cancel each other out
in the Anhorn? I would love to say yes. The thing is, maybe, if they don't give it to best actor and best director in the same year, maybe they don't give rookie of the year and offensive defenseman of the year to the same person, because I think rookie of the year is going to Zeev. I mean, Livanovich, sure, bump. I mean, they're solid.
30-point year.
I think Zeev's on another level.
I think you're probably right. I think he probably takes both of those.
Yeah, I think he takes both. What I have a real problem with in this list is defensive defenseman of the year, and you've got 2 Denver defensemen for defensive defenseman.
Shai Buyum nominated for both offensive and defensive.
Like, what are you talking about?
And we got Nicholas Andrews from CC. A, B, and B. Did they just look at the top of the alphabet for the candidates? Maybe there's like a voting glitch online.
God.
Like if they were using the NCHC website, I wouldn't be surprised if there were some bugs in that system. Dog S website.
God.
But it doesn't seem all that creative with those nominations.
No, it doesn't.
I can't say I think I don't like Nicholas Andrews didn't stick out a ton to me this year that would warrant he's this big shutdown defenseman for CC. Because he's not playing for Denver, maybe I'd vote for him. I would assume it's just gonna be name recognition. And maybe Barons, but maybe Buyum because he's been nominated for 2 different categories. Maybe they would give it to him. I'm just kind of looking at these on the fly, and we're giving off the cuff impressions of these nominations. But so who I'd vote for? Andrews. Who's gonna get it? I will probably say Shai Buyum.
Yeah.
That's a weird category.
It's a weird category, and the fact that you have 2 Denver when that's clearly the worst part of their game, it makes no sense. I don't know what goes into the 3 Stars award. Vidi's up for that, so go VD, I guess.
The 3 Stars Award finalists are based on the highest point totals of Stars of the Game points.
Oh my
earned
God.
During
What
conference
is this?
games only. 5 for first star, 3 for second star, 1 for third star. So this is like a media, like doesn't like Mick Hatton choose the 3 stars of the game after St. Cloud home games? So
yeah. Well, like
well,
I think like the
basically-
whole panel, like all the media, like will vote. And,
all the media. So that Mick Hatton is all the media at St. Cloud games.
no, radio announcers, home and away.
So like Jim Rich gets a vote
Yeah.
for the 3 stars.
Yeah.
I guess I don't know how that works.
Yeah,
but
they usually collect it at the last TV timeout. They'll collect all the
this
votes.
reminds me because we didn't do this year, and we're doing Herbie's again. But I want it next year because I'm not going to go back and listen to every episode we did this year to see who our pals were. But what I want to do
Should
next
we
year
have
is I want to get like a spreadsheet where we get me, yours, and Go Huskies Woos.
Oh.
Our pals, and then at the end of the year we tabulate them.
He did get back to me, and he said Rogers was good, but I'm between VT and Peart, but I'll go with Rogers. So
did you goose that up with saying that we're just gonna say that
I
he
did.
took Rogers?
Yeah, I did wax a little bit on it, but we don't have a POW award yet, so.
Well, next year.
Now next year
we'll do it.
We'll do
we're gonna I don't know. Make this more official.
Yep.
And
Yeah. Well,
keep
we
a
have
running
to
tabulation of the POWs,
and then
because then
the winner I will
we'll have to think a
send
little.
a $5 Chipotle gift card to, since that's legal in college terms now. Well, it's probably $10 now for a Chipotle.
I like that. Maybe we can pass the hat for our 5 listeners.
Yes.
And get Dan Jacobson involved. And Colin Jacobson too.
And Colin
multiple
exactly.
Jacobsons, and we can pass the hat. Maybe get a $20.
He's got some more
Chipotle
money
gift
now.
card.
I know of someone who gave him some.
That's right.
And then I could also do it for. We'll do it for the women's, obviously, and then I will just always pick Grace Delmonico.
Yes,
because she'll finally get to be on the ice. So
that's actually a really good idea.
But.
Well, what else we got? We got defensive forward of the year: Cam Berg, Carter King, Noah Laba. Again, I'm not a CC super fan here, but I guess I don't think of Noah Laba as I don't think of defense when I think of Noah Laba with him. But
again, I don't think of defense when I think of Denver, so I put Cameron Berg.
Who I think, he's been a valuable player for them this year. Again, he's put like a 30-point year for them. So it's more impressive from a point standpoint than defensive, but I know he kills penalties. And there's probably some North Dakota bias involved in the voting here. So yeah, I'll say Berg's going to be the winner of that one. What about, so let's get to these bigger ones.
Yeah, let's get to the real ones.
Coach of the year.
It's Mayotte.
Barry Carl Mayotte.
It's me.
See, I would assume that because that in most sports, Coach of the Year is.
Hey, you didn't suck as much as I thought you would.
It's just, who exceeded expectations the most, which would clearly be Mayotte. But Barry's won this award 4 times, and Furschweiler won it last year. But then prior to that, Barry won it 3 straight years, which was surprising. I remember when Furschweiler won it last year. I'm like, didn't he win it last year? Because I thought again he would have fit that bill of being like surprising, exceeding expectations kind of coach, but they gave it to Furschweiler the second year, not the first year. So I could see remind people. I gotta go back to that preview podcast. You, I believe, picked North Dakota to be bottom half of the league.
I did.
So you could make that case that they exceeded their expectations just as much, or maybe more so than CC did. I still will agree. I think they'll go with a first-time winner with Mayotte this year. Although Carl hasn't won it either, so there's that possibility. But I'll say I'll go with you and go Mayotte on this one. How about rookie of the year? We've kind of mentioned that with Zeev Buyum, Overbump, and Livanovich.
Livanovich.
So that one's Livanovich. Okay. Okay, so there's that, and then we've got goalie of the year. Latkozy, Mbarico, check. Person as the third finalist.
Sure.
Now, we've spent a lot of time talking, pre-packaged narratives die hard in this case, and I not surprised, I suppose, with Persons getting the nod here. I mean, I think we agree, Mbarico and Latkozy are decent picks. Who would be your third finalist rather than Person?
I mean, that's also, that's a good point.
I mean, Matt Davis.
Probably Davis. Ugh.
But not if we weren't impressed with Person. I think Person's got better numbers than Davis does, even. I mean, Cameron Rowe maybe? Played every single minute for Western. I mean, he put up good numbers. They weren't stellar. He's not going to win the award, but I think he's a better finalist than Person. Yeah, you can't really clearly none of the Miami goalies. Duluth goalies, no. St. Cloud goalies, you're not going to put Bassey there, and Posh just didn't play enough. So that's kind of canceled out. So, yeah, I think he'd put Rowe there instead
of Person, yeah.
But it's kind of moot because I'd put Mbarico to win it.
Mbarico's, yeah, definitely.
And then we've got forward of the year, Blake, Devine, and Laba. Yeah. Seeing as I had Blake in my Hobie hat trick, I guess I'll give him the forward of the year.
Yep. And that's where, again, writing and screenplay or whatever, I think he is player of the year and forward of the year. But if they want to switch it up for forward and put Jack Devine and give Blake player of the year, you could do that. But I would give
both. Well,
I would give both to Blake. I would give Blake.
I would too. And for player of the year, I think I'd go Blake, Mbarico, Devine. I think I'd put Mbarico ahead of Blake.
Oh, okay.
Because Mbarico, sorry, we are getting ahead of ourselves. Player of the year is Jackson Blake, Jack Devine, and Caden Mbarico.
Yeah.
It's weird. So it's not like if you get into the semantic debate between MVP and player of the year, like is it most valuable or is it best?
Yeah.
And I'm just looking at the website here. It says player of the year. If you're going to say MVP, you might put Mbarico there because, like, you take Blake off North Dakota. Are they 4 spots lower in the conference? Like maybe, but you take Mbarico off CC. I think they're a significantly worse team.
Yeah, I can see that.
That's where I'd come. I think I would still give it to Blake for both of those awards. We shall see.
Yeah.
Go Huskies woo with the Miettinen, because Miettinen's also involved in that 3 stars award. So I don't know if that's already predetermined on who wins.
It's got to be. Yeah.
Counted up, or if they like vote.
Those are probably the top 3.
Okay.
Maybe not in that order. Maybe they want to keep the suspense.
We need Weems to step in to explain this voting process.
Really dumb. Really dumb.
Yeah. This makes the La La Land pick look competent. If we're talking about Oscar awards fiascos. But we'll see how it all shakes out. Vidi's up for 2, Anhorn's up for offensive D, and then that's it. Yep. So I guess we're big Vidi and Anhorn fans, unless you don't care about awards, because
I only care about one award, and that's the award at the end of the national tournament.
That is correct.
So, last thing I guess I had on my docket. Just because we got eyes on the transfer portal now, so 2 women's Husky players have been rumored to be in the portal. One, Kenzie, I forgot her last name. Sure enough, Kenzie Hope.
Must not.
She did not play this year.
Yeah, I was going to say.
So
What position?
defense.
So she's already in the portal?
Yep.
Okay. What had she played at all?
Nope.
Like last year? So incoming freshman that just got redshirted?
Yeah, I guess. So yeah, she has 4 years of eligibility left. So I guess I don't know
Okay.
how that works. Like, is that technically, are you even in the portal? But I don't know.
Okay. We got another one?
Yes. Again, defense. Jaden Britt. Who,
Really?
Yeah. Who did suit up for, I think, 8 games this season. So.
Yes. Now I'm getting her mixed up with Carmen Bray. I thought, Bray was the one that was going to be redshirted, but then they took the redshirt off for a mid-season after the Grace Wolf injury. And then, Britt was able to play a couple of games. She's the sister of who's the Brit that plays for UND? Logan Britt?
Logan, yep.
He was the transfer from your guys, Sacred Heart. And so it runs in the family with defensive defenseman with the Britt family.
Yep.
Well, sorry to see those players go, particularly Britt, because we at least got to see some of her last year. But I mean, it's always possible they can come back if they don't hook on to another team. But this is modern college hockey, women's side and men's side. It's nothing is taken for granted anymore, and I'm sure that would not be surprised if there's more current players that enter that portal from St. Cloud's perspective. But I'm also expecting there to be some movement coming in, some new blood coming in as well from the portal. Podolsky was very active last year. I would expect maybe not the amount of activity this year, but still at least I would say 2 or 3 players probably added by the portal. So keep me updated on that, because that's news to me. Where did you find that out?
Score. So
yes, that would be nice. Where are you finding this out? What's your source? Is this TikTok?
No, it's Twitter. I found a spreadsheet that kept up to date with, or that's up to date with the transfer portal information. So
we know that our friend
both men
Sydney,
and women. So I've got.
Is this a Sydney Wolf production? Because I know that she was on top of this last year with a spreadsheet kind of deal. Because I need to get that, because she's on top of things, and
this isn't resource. Sydney Wolf, though. I do. If I see her at the Frozen Faceoff, I do have a bone to pick with her. So depending on how inebriated it be, I gotta talk to her about. She did share the Huskies recruit spreadsheet, but now she locked it. So now we need a password to get into it. Like, she had a really good breakdown of all the recruits coming in for St. Cloud State and whatnot.
It's probably because jabronis like you were going in and making some edits.
Oh no, you couldn't edit it. You can just view it.
Well, she locked it.
So
now you're going to have the secret password.
Yeah.
So
maybe I'll
try to get on her good side.
Yeah. So we'll see. Maybe I'll run into her at the Frozen Faceoff, and I can get that. Maybe.
Hope you do.
So I don't. Otherwise, I'll just go back to guessing. Not good at it, but that about does her for this.
That about does her.
So,
this might have been a record.
I think our season preview ones with the KVSE guys. I think.
Yeah, not including special guests.
Not including special guests. This might be.
This is a long one. We hope we have another long one next weekend.
Exactly,
next week, because that means that we're going to be previewing an NCAA game.
Well, you're going to be coming with the special report. Andrew special
Saturday night
prediction show.
Hold your phone up to your face in anticipation for when that episode drops.
I am excited. So,
and it's probably going to be much more wrong than I normally have been.
Chaos.
Well, it's going to be chaos.
That's what we're going to root for. So, until next time, go Huskies. Woo!